Man, it all went south so fast. I was just a regular dude, Leo, working my shift at the diner in downtown Chicago. One minute, I'm wiping down tables, the next, I hear this screaming outside. Not just regular shouting, but that primal, raw terror. I peeked through the window, and that's when I saw it. A guy, a regular customer, Mr. Henderson, was biting into another man's arm like it was a damn steak. Blood everywhere. And the guy he was biting, he wasn't fighting back, he was just writhing, and his eyes were going milky white. Then he started to twitch, to sort of stand up. It was like watching a movie, except the popcorn was my own spilled coffee and the screams were real. My first thought was, what the actual hell? But then more people started acting like that. It wasn't just one lunatic. It was a cascade. People were clawing at each other, their faces contorted, mouths hanging open, just eating. I saw a woman I served breakfast to every Tuesday, Mrs. Gable, her face all mangled, teeth bared, chasing after a terrified kid down the street. It wasn't just a disease, it was like some primal switch got flipped, turning everyone into a ravenous, mindless beast. The sounds, oh God, the sounds were the worst. Gurgles, roars, the wet tearing of flesh. My stomach lurched, and a wave of pure, unadulterated panic washed over me. I slammed the diner door shut, bolted it, and hid behind the counter, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Days blurred into a nightmare. The initial shock gave way to a gnawing hunger. The diner's supplies dwindled fast. I had to venture out. Every shadow was a potential threat, every distant groan sent shivers down my spine. I learned to move in silence, to listen for the telltale shuffling, the guttural moans. I saw things that, well, they stick with you. A group of those things, they were once soldiers, I think, their uniforms tattered, tearing apart a deer carcass with an unnatural ferocity. Their eyes, if you could even call them that anymore, were just vacant, burning voids. It's a constant battle, not just against them, but against yourself. The paranoia is crippling. You can't trust anyone. I saw a group of survivors, they looked so relieved, until one of them pulled out a rusty pipe and started bashing the others over the head for their meager supplies. Trust is a luxury we can't afford anymore. The world is a graveyard, and we're just the scavengers trying to outrun the worms. This whole thing, it's a hell I wouldn't wish on anyone. I'm recording this, maybe it's a message, a last flicker of hope, or just proof that Leo from the diner existed. If you're out there, and you can hear this, please, try to survive. And hey, if you're finding this, maybe hit that subscribe button, give it a like. It's probably the last thing I can ask of anyone. It's something, right? This is me, Leo. Trying to make it through. The gnawing in Anya's stomach was a constant companion, a dull ache that even the brackish water she'd managed to find did little to quell. The dried rations were almost gone. She adjusted the makeshift bandage on her arm, a souvenir from a close encounter in a looted pharmacy. The world had become a symphony of decay, a constant whisper of shuffling feet and guttural moans that permeated the very air. The sun, a sickly yellow orb, offered no comfort, only illuminating the pervasive dust and debris that coated every surface. She shielded her eyes, scanning the desolate street. A flicker of movement in the broken window of a bakery caught her attention. Her heart leaped, then plummeted. It wasn't a survivor. It was one of them, its pale, emaciated form pressed against the shattered glass, its head lolling unnaturally. It turned, and a low, rasping sound escaped its throat, a siren call to its kind. Anya ducked back into the alley, pressing herself against the cold brick, her breath catching in her throat. She had to keep moving. They were always coming. She tightened her grip on the salvaged pipe, her knuckles white. How much longer could she keep this up? How much longer could the little one, bundled against her chest, endure this existence? The rasping call echoed, closer this time. Anya risked a peek around the corner. Two more of them, shuffling, their heads lolling unnaturally. Their eyes, when they caught the dim light, were milky and unfocused, but their hunger was palpable. The little one stirred against her, a soft whimper escaping the swaddled cloth. Anya shushed it, rocking gently, trying to project a calm she didn't feel. Running was no longer an option. Too many of them. She needed a place to make a stand, somewhere defensible. The alley behind the old market building. It had only one entrance, and the walls were high. If she could just get there. She moved, a shadow against the grimy walls, the pipe held ready. The shuffling sounds multiplied. They were spreading out, a tide of vacant hunger. Anya hugged the little one tighter, its warmth a small anchor in the chilling reality. She could hear them now, the drag of their feet, the soft guttural sounds. They were not fast, but they were relentless. And there were so many. The market building loomed, a dark, hulking shape against the bruised sky. Almost there. Just a few more yards. She burst into the alley, the single entrance offering a sliver of hope. She scrambled to the back wall, looking for any kind of advantage. The space was narrow, choked with debris. Old crates, rotting sacks, the usual detritus of a forgotten place. She pushed a pile of refuse against the entrance, a flimsy barrier, but the best she could do. The rasping calls were at the mouth of the alley now. One of them bumped against her meager barricade, a dull thud. Anya braced herself, the pipe feeling heavy and inadequate. The first one pushed through the gap she hadn't quite sealed. Its milky eyes fixed on her. It moved with that jerky, unnatural gait. Anya swung the pipe, a wild, desperate arc. It connected with a sickening crack. The thing stumbled, but didn't fall. Another appeared, then another. The alley was too small. They were squeezing in, filling the space. Anya fought, a cornered animal, the little one a silent, trusting weight against her. She landed another blow, then another, but for every one she pushed back, two more seemed to press forward. The stench of decay grew stronger. The rasping sounds were a chorus now, all around her. She felt a sharp pain in her arm, then her side. The pipe clattered from her numb fingers. She sank to her knees, the little one still cradled, her vision blurring. The last thing she saw was the pale, vacant stare of one of them, its mouth opening in that awful, hungry sound. It was just a normal Tuesday, or at least, it was supposed to be. I was stocking shelves at the local diner, same old grind, you know. Then the screaming started. Not just a few people yelling, but this gut-wrenching, primal sound that echoed off the buildings. I peeked out the window, and that's when I saw it. A guy, someone I'd served coffee to 100 times, was just tearing into another guy. Blood everywhere. It wasn't a fight, it was something else. Something monstrous. Then they started coming. Out of alleys, stumbling from houses, their eyes milky white, skin pale and stretched taut over bone. They weren't people anymore. They were just hunger. A wave of them, a shambling, groaning tide, and they were all moving towards the diner. My heart hammered against my ribs. I remember thinking, this isn't real. This can't be real. But the sounds, the smell, it was all too real. I grabbed a heavy meat cleaver from the kitchen, my hands shaking like a leaf. The regulars started panicking, shoving, screaming. Some of them got caught by the first few that broke through the glass doors. It was chaos. Pure, unadulterated terror. I saw Mrs. Gable, sweet old Mrs. Gable, get dragged down, her dentures flying. I managed to get out the back, through the kitchen. The alley was a mess. Bodies, some still twitching, others already being, well, you know. I had to keep moving. The city, my city, was a nightmare. Sirens wailed, but they faded, replaced by that awful, endless moaning. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Away from the sounds, away from the sights that were already burning themselves into my brain. The desperation started to set in. Every corner turned could be my last. Every shadow held a potential horror. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone in a world that had gone mad. The hunger in their eyes, that vacant, predatory stare, it's something you can't unsee. It chips away at you, makes you question everything. I found myself on the outskirts of town, near the old industrial park. It was quieter here, but the silence was just as unnerving. I saw a family, trying to get into a car, but one of them had already turned. The father was trying to fight him off, but it was no use. I watched, frozen, as the mother and daughter were overwhelmed. The raw, animalistic sounds. I had to turn away. I can still hear them though, replaying in my head. I haven't eaten in what feels like days. My throat is parched, and the gnawing in my stomach is almost as bad as the fear. Every rustle of leaves, every distant groan, makes me jump. I'm just trying to find a safe place, a place where I don't have to see people doing that to each other. But nowhere feels safe. The fear is constant, a cold knot in my gut. The raw, animalistic sounds. I had to turn away. I can still hear them though, replaying in my head. I haven't eaten in what feels like days. My throat is parched, and the gnawing in my stomach is almost as bad as the fear. Every rustle of leaves, every distant groan, makes me jump. I'm just trying to find a safe place, a place where I don't have to see people doing that to each other. But nowhere feels safe. The fear is constant, a cold knot in my gut. I stumbled through the dense undergrowth, branches whipping at my face. Thirst was becoming unbearable. I scanned the surroundings desperately, my eyes darting from one shadow to the next. Then, through the trees, I saw it, a glint of metal. Hope, a fragile thing, flickered within me. It could be anything, a trap, or worse, but it was also a chance. Pushing aside the last of the thick foliage, I found myself on the edge of a small clearing. In the center stood what looked like a metal barrel, half buried in the earth. It was old, rusted, but there was a faint sheen of water clinging to its rim. I scrambled towards it, my movements clumsy and desperate. Cupping my hands, I brought the cool liquid to my lips. It tasted metallic, not the cleanest water, but it was water nonetheless. As I drank, I noticed something else. Near the barrel, a few hardy plants, somehow thriving despite the harshness, bore small, dark berries. They looked unfamiliar, but hunger overruled caution. I picked one, examined it, and then, taking a deep breath, popped it into my mouth. A burst of tartness followed, not unpleasant. I gathered more, the small act of sustenance a tiny victory against the overwhelming despair. The clearing felt slightly more exposed, but the immediate relief of water and food gave me a moment to think. I needed to find more people, but the kind of people who wouldn't make those sounds. I thought about the stories I'd heard, whispers of hidden settlements, places where folks lived differently. It was a long shot, a dangerous gamble, but staying here meant a slow decline. I had to move, had to search. I decided to follow a faint, almost invisible path leading away from the clearing, hoping it might lead somewhere, anywhere, with a bit more life and a lot less of the horror I was trying to escape. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful sight that did little to quell the unease. Darkness always brought new fears, new possibilities of what lurked in the shadows. As I walked, the ground began to slope upwards. The trees thinned slightly, and I could hear the distant rush of what might be a river. Another possibility for water, and maybe, just maybe, a sign of life. The air grew cooler, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something floral. It was a change, a subtle shift from the oppressive stillness I had grown accustomed to. I pressed on, the image of the berries and the taste of the water a small comfort against the vast unknown ahead. The path was indistinct, but I kept my focus, putting one foot in front of the other, driven by a desperate need to simply keep going. Okay, so imagine this, I'm Elias, just a regular guy, right? Used to work in accounting. Totally mundane. One Tuesday, I was on my lunch break, just grabbing a sandwich, and then it all went sideways. Sirens, screaming, people running. At first, I thought it was some kind of terrorist attack. But then I saw it. Old Mrs. Henderson, who always gave me cookies, well, she was gnawing on Mr. Peterson's arm like it was a rotisserie chicken. And her eyes, man, they were just blank, milky white. It wasn't human. It was wrong. The city, my city, the place I knew every street corner of, it just dissolved into chaos. People were turning on each other, or worse, they were turning into those things. I saw a woman, a doctor I recognized from the local clinic, just tearing into someone's throat with her teeth. It was a mess. Pure, unadulterated horror. My brain just couldn't process it. I remember freezing, sandwich still in hand, just staring. It was like a bad movie, but the smell was real, that coppery, sickening stench of blood and something decaying. Then, survival instinct kicked in, I guess. I dropped the sandwich, which felt weirdly sacrilegious at that moment, and just ran. Ran like my life depended on it, because it did. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Away from the screams, away from the gnashing teeth, away from the realization that everything I knew was gone. I ended up crammed into a tiny convenience store, barricaded behind the counter, listening to the sounds from outside. Thuds, shrieks, and that awful guttural moaning. Every little noise made me jump. I was so scared, I think I cried. And I was alone. Utterly, terrifyingly alone. The silence in between the bursts of violence was almost worse, because then you just hear your own heart pounding like a drum. I started to wonder if I was going to die in there, just from sheer terror. The muffled banging on the door started again, harder this time. It wasn't just random thuds, it sounded like something was trying to break in. I ducked lower behind the counter, pressing myself against the cold linoleum. My breath hitched in my throat. Were they looking for me? Or just trying to get through the store? It was impossible to tell. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the noise, but it only made the pounding in my ears louder. Minutes crawled by, each second an eternity. The banging stopped as abruptly as it began. A new sound emerged, a scraping, dragging noise that seemed to be coming from the side of the building. It was slow, deliberate, and sent shivers down my spine. I risked a peek over the counter. Through the grimy front window, I could see shapes moving in the dim light, shambling figures that swayed unnaturally. They weren't like people. Their movements were jerky, their bodies hunched. And the moaning. It was a constant, low hum that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. I knew I couldn't stay here. This place, which had seemed like a sanctuary moments ago, was now a trap. I scanned the store frantically. What could I use? A broom? A display of canned goods? Nothing felt like enough. My eyes landed on the back door, a flimsy-looking thing that led to a narrow alley. It was my only chance. Gathering all the courage I could muster, I slowly, quietly, crawled out from behind the counter. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a gunshot. I kept my eyes fixed on the front window, watching the grotesque figures outside. They seemed to be milling around, some bumping into each other, others clawing at the glass. Reaching the back door, I fumbled with the lock. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely grip the metal. The scraping sound had stopped, but the moaning continued, closer now. I could almost feel their presence. Finally, the lock clicked. I pulled the door open just enough to slip through, then gently closed it behind me, praying it didn't make too much noise. The alley was dark and smelled of damp garbage. I hugged the wall, moving as silently as possible, my heart hammering against my ribs. The sounds from the front of the store were still audible, a grim reminder of what I was escaping. I crept along, looking for any sign of a way out, a break in the wall, anything that wasn't this suffocating confinement. Then I saw it, a gap between two buildings, a narrow passage leading somewhere. I ran for it, not daring to look back. The moaning seemed to follow, a chilling soundtrack to my desperate flight. As I stumbled through the narrow gap, the stench of decay intensified, a visceral testament to the chaos I was leaving behind. Cobwebs brushed against my face, and the rough brick scraped my arms, but the fear propelled me forward, a primal instinct overriding any discomfort. The sounds of pursuit, though muffled by the close confines, still echoed, urging me to greater speed. I emerged into a deserted alleyway, a desolate stretch of cracked pavement and overflowing dumpsters, but blessedly, it was empty. The sudden silence, broken only by my own ragged breaths, was both a relief and a stark reminder of my isolation. Looking back, I can see how each of those moments, however terrifying, taught me something vital. The initial panic, the frantic search for shelter, the agonizing wait for the cacophony to subside, it was all a brutal education. That narrow alley, seemingly insignificant at the time, offered not just an escape but a crucial opportunity to assess my surroundings, to gather my thoughts before the next inevitable challenge. It taught me that even in the direst situations, a moment of stillness, a chance to breathe, can be as valuable as any weapon. Remembering these trials underscores the absolute necessity of preparedness. Having a basic understanding of how to find shelter, how to move unseen, and how to stay calm under pressure can truly make the difference between surviving and succumbing. It's not about having an arsenal, it's about having a mindset. One simple tip to carry forward is to always have a secondary, less obvious escape route in mind, even when you think you're safe. Whether it's a window you might have overlooked or a less traveled path, having options is paramount. Above all, what I've learned is the profound power of composure. In moments of sheer terror, when your heart hammers against your ribs and your mind races, the ability to take a breath, to focus, and to think rationally is your greatest ally. Panic is a predator in itself, and fighting it is often the first and most important battle. Thank you for joining me on this journey through these harrowing experiences. Your willingness to learn from these accounts means a great deal. Please, always prioritize your safety and preparedness. If you found this account insightful or helpful, consider subscribing and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps spread awareness and fosters a community of preparedness.